there! My pal Knack asked me to share a few videos of the work that I was working on. So here's today's project. I need to add trim around this newly installed window. So, as you can see here, there's just the replacement framing. And we need to add new trim boards here that cover up this section of drywall. So first thing I gotta do is get all of these dimensions written down. Okay, so what we're doing in this, there's going to be boards installed that go out to here, and that's going to be all the way around. And then there'll be other trim boards that go around the outside here. So first we have to get these dimensions written down, and I have to put the phone down for that since I need both hands to measure with. Okay, so here's all the dimensions I copied down, and yes, I realize I wrote fractions and decimals. It's all right, I know what one is what. Another thing to I'm going to have to bear in mind when it comes to actually putting the wood in here is that there are these weird gaps, because the window goes perfectly along straight until it gets to this corner, and then it goes like that. And then along the top, it's also perfectly straight, and then it goes like that at the other end. And then these were perfectly plumb. But, well, that's the frame I had to work with. I did the best I could with it. So now I'm going to go out and start manufacturing the wood. All right, so quick look at the bat cave here shows that I have an awful lot of irons in the fire. But what we're going to deal with right now is that we need to take some of this pile of lumber, which was rough cut and then had been partially planed, and then plane it down to 3/4 of an inch in this thickness planer. And then after that, we'll manufacture it down with the radial arm saw. So I have to get with it. Okay, so if you're wondering what some of all this junk is here in the garage, is had a late relative, and he had an awful lot of stuff in his workshop, so it all kind of got distributed to the family, and it hasn't all found a home in the workshop. So here, all of this is wood that he was going to use for some project. And he was planing down, but he only got so far. And then this stuff here, these are actually the trim boards for around that window. And then these are the wood we're going to plane down. So just like when you go to a big box store, you got to sort through and find some good pieces, because you never know exactly what you're going to find in the pile, because this just came from some oak tree somewhere. Okay, I've selected two pretty good looking boards, but I found out that they've not all been planed to the same thickness, and there are still some spots where they're kind of rough. So I've set my old trusty thickness planer to 1 inch, and we'll start there and we'll see how they go. Starting at the thickness where it was, it's still getting some there, and I'm getting some places where it does plane and other places where it kind of skips over. But as we start cranking down the thickness, that should all go away. Alright, so here we are at 1 inch. Going the wrong way. So since this is oak, I'm gonna try only going down half a 32nd each time, and we'll see how it's doing. It's not the best planer, but it's been pretty durable. So it's a good improvement so far. I just need to do that a whole lot more times and then we'll be down the right thickness. See you then. Just a word about safety here. Always use all your protective equipment, and that includes safety glasses, hearing protection, dust mask, and a good old hat to keep some of this dust from falling out of your eyes. And when this machine is running, never ever stick your hands into a working machine. Never. Okay, so here we have our finished boards. Well, finished in that we've got them smooth, really plain. But now we're gonna have to take care of these rough edges and get ourselves a good, smooth, straight starting spot, and then cut it down to at least the right width for our trim. There, right here we have one smooth edge and one rough edge. So I'm gonna set the saw a little bit tighter and then flip that good edge against the guide and run it through so that hopefully it gives me a little bit of straighter edge out on this side, and then maybe do a time or two more. Try to get it as flat and even as I can. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but this is the way I've always done it. And I'm using my radial arm saw. You could do this on a table saw. My table saw is up at the cottage, and this is what I've got here, and it does work. Alright, so you can see we're getting a much smoother cut on both sides. Yeah, you're occasionally getting some burn spots and things where things are catching, but as we go back and forth and get through, we'll get rid of them. And then once we feel that we have a good straight edge, then I can cut it to the right thickness, or width in this case. It's just, when you start with rough cut lumber, they're not always straight. So sometimes it pinches in some places and sometimes not. Oh, in true fashion, whenever you start one project, it always has to mushroom up into something bigger. This was the blade that was on there. And every one of these teeth here are very, very dull. So it was almost burning more through than it was cutting. So then I went to go check what other ones I've got, This one, which still has very sharp, but here and there it's actually missing some of the carbide teeth, so I don't want to use that, which only then gives me this other one here that I've got left. I've never used it. But then I found the other half of the little piece that holds the inside safety together is missing. So I'm going to run to the hardware store and see if they've got anything like that. Looks kind of like this. To at least get me through today. Otherwise I may have to rig up something that's not quite right and not as safe to just get me through today while I order a new one of these. But off to the hardware store I go. All right, I just wanted to show a little comparison here. Old blade, new blade. What a difference sharp can make. So always use a sharp blade. Just rule of thumb. Okay, so I have my boards ripped down to 3.5 and plain and looking nice and all of that stuff. So I can finally go back and check my measured diagram, because if you remember, this whole project was about making window trim, not making boards. Okay, so it's showing everything is 3.5 inches wide except right here. So I'm gonna go double check that's right. All right, cutting the bottom board. And then we will have to plane this one down another, or not plane, but cut off another 1/4 inch from the edge here, because there's actually a board that sticks out just a little bit from underneath the window above it. So I wanted to get it to length, or at least approximately to length, since I actually got 2 different measurements. I got 47 3/4 and 47 5/8. So I cut it to 47 3/4 because you can't just add more length on, but you can always make it shorter. So now I'm gonna cut it back down to the 3 1/4 wide. Okay, here's the test fit of the bottom piece, and I've already put in a wedge here to get it up to level, so it looks like that'll work. Okay, here's the test fit of the top. You'll notice that right here and here, we are leaving a nail sticking up. That's because these boards have to come back out later to be painted. But we need them in place in order to get the corners on the right dimensions for the trim boards on the outsides. All right, and now here's number 3. All right, and here's number 4. Okay, so now we're gonna get to figuring out the exact right size of the trim. So we got together, the wife and I, and she figured that it looked best using samples if it was halfway through here. And I'm not really worried about that because I've got like this much wood behind the drywall. It's a big space to nail onto. So what I did next was use this handy little right triangle and found the midpoint so I can measure for exactly from there up to there, and then the same ones that I did already on the other sides. So that should give me the exact dimensions for cutting the angles on the trim boards. And the trim boards look like these. So that's going to approximately look kind of like that, just with proper miter cuts on the end. And then another board will go over the top to make a window ledge right here. All right, got the trim clamped into the old chop saw here and set to 45. So here's the first cut. So then all I gotta do is measure out and then flip it over and do the next cut. Well, I just double checked the angle of this cut here, and it turns out that it's off by a whole 1.5 degrees. So this old Chicago saw clearly is out of adjustment, or maybe was never in adjustment. I'm assuming there's some sort of fine-tuning something or other somewhere on it that I could get it dialed in right, but I don't need another project today, so I'm going to cut all these things on the radial arm saw like I always used to. With a little luck, that should be the right size piece for the bottom. A real quick check here showed me that I completely measured it wrong. Well, technically I have measurements from my diagram right, but the measurement of my piece was wrong. But rather than panic, I'll just turn it into one of the side pieces. And I can now still reuse the piece. Boy, sure was a good thing that nobody saw that. All right, so there it is. It's in place. Used one nail to just tack it up in place, and as a trick to just hold it in the right position, I had held it in place with some packing tape along here just until I could get one nail through it. On to the next cut. It's a good idea to double and sometimes even triple check your measurements, and then add a line on the back, so that way when you're done cutting it, you'll have something you can look at right away to see if you're on. Alright, so that's another one temporarily tacked into place. Now we just gotta start tackling the sides. Alright, here's another side. Does that want to go? Here we go, last cut for the angle. Alright, all the trim is done around the outside. Now I just have to make a window ledge. Alright, we're just planning and measuring, and I see that this board here sticks out. And that was part of an earlier plan that changed and never got fixed. So the board that comes up here is going to have to cut back to fit around it. So what I figured is this. I would take my 3/4 boards and just back cut the 3/8, and then down at this side I'll just do a round corner on both the top and the bottom to make it a smooth ledge that you won't bump into and hurt yourself. Alright, so here's our board with our angled cut for the back. I'll just do a test fit here. Well, that fits like a charm. It's a nice little ledge. So now all I have to do is to round this a little bit so that there's not a hard edge for someone, because it's already smooth. Alright, I've made some test samples to look at different roundovers. This would be, I don't know what it's called, it's a fairly wide quarter round, but you can think of it more of as a half round. Or there's this, which is the quarter round, kind of like that. Goes out, but still smooth enough nobody's going to hurt themselves when they whack into it. And then this is an 1/8 round. It's kind of like you just sanded it over a good bit. And it's got a peel too. So I think it's going to be between the two of these. think I like this one best. And there we have it. All set up and set in place. So there's the whole thing for you. I'm not normally one for painting something as beautiful as this red oak, but I love my wife and she'd like to have it painted, so we're gonna have it painted. So we'll try to give you another look after it's all done. All right, and there we have it, all completed. So when it comes to installing custom window trim, it seems that this old man knew just what to do. Till next time.